Fantastic. And we've got some hands up, which we can, if you have any questions, we'll be able to activate the chat, and we'll try to respond as appropriate. Great. Well, as we get started, I'd like to introduce, my name is David Singh. I'm a partner here at CSPN, and really excited about this session today. It brings me back to my roots is when I first left business school, went into Deloitte's public sector practice in their consulting group, and had a great run of working everywhere from the court systems through to a CRM project with the Ontario Agricultural Society, which I think Jonathan, our guest speaker today, has some similar backgrounds in that area. I just remember building a CRM for sick goats at one point, and how do we track goats throughout the province of Ontario, and all the way back through to how do we fast forward to today, where our team is supporting municipalities and at the local level, and then the provincial level, as well as the federal level, and how do we really reshape citizen service. And today's session is a really great kickoff, our summer kickoff series en route to our Citizen Service Summit, which is a 2-day event in middle of September, which we'll all get some more links to. And everyone who's attending here will have complimentary access for you and your teams to join us for these 2-day sessions. We're hoping and pretty sure Jonathan will be able to join us again. We've got to bend his arm if he's got some time in his busy schedule to join us. And with that, I'd like to officially welcome all of you to the session today. Jonathan Alboum is a senior or principal strategist in the public sector for ServiceNow. But most importantly, and I think that's not to say that that's not important, is Jonathan comes from both experience within the public sector within America, and most importantly in the role of CIO and CTO. And I think that's important as we talk about technology and the changing needs of citizen service. It's not about external folks talking about things, but people who've sat in either your seats or the seats of your technology partners. And I come back to the recent contact center survey that we did earlier in the spring, where our technology partners continue to be, for those who are leading customer change, continue to be their #1 partner to go and ask questions for. And so he was that trusted advisor internally within an organization, and continues to be that externally at ServiceNow. So with that, I'd like to say welcome, Jonathan, and maybe just for your chance to, I'm saying hello from Toronto, Ontario, where we're still clearly in lockdown, and we see our home libraries and from there. But maybe just where are you calling in from today, and a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, David, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to the event this afternoon. I am zooming in from Arlington, Virginia. For those of you not familiar with Arlington, we are a suburb directly outside of Washington, D.C. And I worked in the federal government for many years, and so it was very convenient location to live in. And I've worked around the government for even longer than that. When I was an employee of the U.S. federal government, I served in a variety of IT executive management positions. I started as the deputy CIO at the USDA Food and Nutrition Service. That's the Department of Agriculture, the Food and Nutrition Service, the agency that manages the food stamp program, the Women, Infants, and Children program, school lunch program, all the different nutrition programs in the United States. And I had worked around that agency as a management consultant before taking the plunge into government. And I had a really great run in government. I worked in government for 11 plus years. From that deputy CIO position, I eventually became the chief information officer for that agency, and then worked at the General Services Administration within the government for a few years, doing some IT leadership positions and organizational change management. And that agency is focused on some of the core administrative services that any organization needs in order to be successful. Things like procurement, managing a fleet of vehicles, managing our public buildings and office space for federal employees. But ultimately, I really felt a strong connection to the mission of the Department of Agriculture. And I had a chance to return to USDA, and working for the then Secretary of Agriculture, the former governor of the state of Iowa, a gentleman by the name of Tom Vilsack, who actually has returned into that same role of Secretary of Agriculture in the Biden administration. But I had a chance to return, and I worked for him, and I supported him in some strategic IT initiatives. And eventually he appointed me to become the CIO for the entire Department of Agriculture. So, I saw the agency's mission from, a lower level, a sub-agency where we're dealing with programs and then working on some strategic projects, worked with different agencies, and eventually, was elevated to the department level and worked across all of the missions, and really got to see the way technology drove the mission. We used to say technology is the thing that energizes the mission: the food, the farms, the families, the forests, the things that USDA was most closely aligned to. The information and the technology made the real difference. So when you can see it from that very practical perspective, it gives a different meaning when you're at a technology company like ServiceNow, where we work across just about every federal agency in the United States, and many many state and local organizations in the U.S. and across the world. When you've worked in the space and you've been the operator of a large, complicated technology environment, and there's a technology company and a tool, a platform like ServiceNow, you can really talk about it in a way that supports achieving the mission, driving those outcomes, creating better opportunities for the government to serve citizens. And citizens can be served the way they want to be served, not the way legacy technology sort of requires it. It's that transformation that I know we want to talk about today. And my experience, I think is for me at ServiceNow has been a really good accelerator of those conversations.
That's great. I think one of my winter reading books this year was Michael Lewis's The Fifth Risk, and I'm not sure if it actually goes right into the USDA in particular. It talks about some of the other ones. It does.
He has a whole chapter on USDA.
I think it was, and it's for those who want to get into American politics on that side. It's an interesting read about the transition of government, and while Jonathan's joining us from south of the border, the concepts and what we're talking about, they apply to every level of government. And I was just talking to another organization, one of our large school boards, and they're going through this exact same kind of conversation of transition and moving things around from that perspective. And so, John, I know you've been having conversations with lots of different organizations in the public sector, and we're going to talk about some of the surveying that you and the team have done. Yeah. But I guess just to start off was, in the last 18 months, the world changed. I think everyone has recognized that, and is continuing to change. And from your perspective, what were some of the most interesting, positive or negative, changes that you've seen and or wish that you had have seen in some of your clients' organizations?
So I think there's two things. One, again, with my lens for the U.S. federal government, at least, we spent a lot of time and money investing in the modernization of our infrastructures over the past, 5 to 10 years. And those investments really paid off when we had to move to remote work. In many cases, it was almost seamless. Some agencies had, a longer transition, but on the order of 3 to 4 weeks, in terms of making sure the agency employees had all the equipment they needed, the agency had the bandwidth and telecommunications infrastructure needed. But we were able to scale very quickly into a remote way of working full-time. Now, every agency had some amount of telework, but no agency was full-time telework as we moved into. So the technology investments we made, I think, were very clearly part of the reason we could transition successfully. So I think that was very positive. And I know that's replicated itself in the private sector and in other governments, but having been part of that IT modernization push when I was in government, I was very, proud to see how well people responded. At the same time, we had to change the way we were doing our missions, how we were working with our customers. And, many agencies, including the USDA, has some processes that were very in-person focused. The Department of Agriculture hosts or has 3,000 plus offices across the United States for farmers and ranchers to come into to transact business. Well, those offices were closed, during the height of the pandemic. And how are we going to transact business in those offices? That's a question. The U.S. federal government stood up many programs to support business owners and families and others during the pandemic. And different agencies across the government needed to be able to quickly respond to those new requirements, those new programs, and with technology systems to support the public. So, from what could we have done better? I think in just about all the cases, these programs were implemented successfully. But the challenge when you're moving that fast is to do the implementation in a way that's sustainable. And I think there are some cases where the urgency of the moment required us to cobble together technologies, bolt on digital technologies on the manual processes, and we were successful in being able to serve the public. But I question, will those same workflows be successful as we move out of the pandemic into whatever the new normal is? Because we know that there are very significant expectations that that agencies have. Excuse me, that the public has. And I'm going to share my screen again, and I have a couple of points I want to share around this survey you referenced, because we know that expectations are really high for the public. So with these high expectations, are we going to be able to successfully serve our constituencies with the technology systems we have and the changes we made in the heights of the pandemic? And I think the answer is maybe, and it remains to be seen, because there are I think generally a lot of barriers to the way we serve the public. We don't always have all the right channels. We had to stand up new ways of interacting with the public. And now we have to ask the question, how do people want to communicate with their government post-pandemic? We were forced into online, eliminating some in-person ways of communicating and interacting. And will people want those to come back? And I think we have to ask those questions. And if they're comfortable without them, can we stand these things down and save money in our agencies? And secondly, we still have a very siloed approach in a lot of our agencies. And whenever we have silos, that's going to take longer. Information has to traverse multiple bureaucracies inside one larger bureaucracy. So those siloed operations can get in our way. And I don't know that the pandemic necessarily eliminated silos. If anything, I think in some cases it highlighted where they are and create some opportunity for us. And then lastly, we can be very reactive, and we were successful in responding to the pandemic, but it was more of a reaction. The digital drive, digital transformation that we were all talking about, was kicked into, it was vastly accelerated during the pandemic. But we were reacting to the moment. We were not pushing towards digital 24/7. 2 years ago, we were talking about it, but we weren't doing it. So when we are very reactive, we don't necessarily create the best solutions and the most thought out approaches, and it's going to impact the way we serve our citizens. So we want to move our entire mentality from being reactive, not just how we provide service, but how we modernize and manage and digitally transform our agencies, from reactive to proactive, and continue with the momentum that we now have. And I think some of these concepts you can see in the survey you were alluding to. One of the things that comes to mind is that 7 out of 10 people have had a negative experience with government, and they say that negative experience interacting with an agency impacts the way they think about the government overall, which is really, really unfortunate. But you understand, it's one of these things where we can lose trust that we build up over time, very quickly. And all you need is that one bad experience to say, oh, all of the government is bad and they can't serve me well. And this other statistic I think is very important to reference too, that it's sometimes very difficult to make contact with the right organization inside the government. whether it's outdated or complicated systems, or it's just a organization structure that's hard for someone outside of government to understand. It's not simple to get to the right place. And 60% of people we talked to told us that. And then once they're in, they need help. And that we have government employees who are spending their time helping people navigate a system or navigate a process when those things are pretty routine. And theoretically, if they're designed in a way with the human at the center, a human-centric design approach, perhaps, we are then putting our government employees who are the lifeblood of these agencies, in whatever level of government or whatever geography you're talking about, they're doing the really high value added work, moving that agency mission forward. They're not doing the sort of mundane thing of helping somebody fill out a form. But we really have to think about how we build our systems and how we build our technologies that interface with the government, so we can be giving the public what they need in order to interact and get the services that they're after at the moment. And you can, if we just stay on the side, it sounds very doom and gloomy, but it really isn't. I think that there are some really optimistic points from this survey that I want to share. Is that 74% are more open to digitally interacting with their government because of the pandemic. So we have the right environment right now. The time is right to really make investments and think about how we interact, how the technologies that we create and the way we offer them to the public, because people want it. And, people are looking for more digital options. They continue to tell us that. So, but it's not just, let's go online on my laptop. Can I interact in a mobile friendly way? I'm on my phone most of the time. Can I interact through in ways similar to the apps that I use? Can I use chat? Can I, is there a chatbot? Is there a virtual agent? Is there automation to drive a process forward quickly for me? Because, this is what people are seeing when they interact with with private companies. And a lot of private sector organizations are ahead of public sector. I think we know this, and in our survey, 83% of people told us they think that that consumer companies provide better service than government. And I'm a big believer in public service. It's in my blood. My entire family has served in different levels of government in different ways, and I look at that and I want it to be switched. I want people to think that the government provides the best customer service as possible. We are working for the taxpayers when we're in government, and we should be at the forefront of providing great customer service experiences. So when I look at these survey questions, and I recognize that there are opportunities within this, but we have made some really good progress. But I think the headline is, while we've made progress, there's a lot more for us to be focused on doing.
I think just as you share some of these points, I think it's super interesting, and the ability that the governments were forced to change, and in some cases these sort of misnomers that people didn't want these digital things, or one of the myths I always heard was that, well, we've got a wide range of the population, the entire range of the population in a lot of ways, and we've got some of our older folks that don't want digital. They want that in-person element, and that's actually just not necessarily the case. That people have moved up in their technology curve doesn't mean that we can't ignore folks that are struggling in those areas. But it means that the spectrum is moving, and we need to find ways to see that shift.
And we need to be mindful that it's important for us to be able to meet people where they are, and there are going to be times where there are some who need an in-person option, or they need a customer service experience that's more hands-on. And that's okay. We're here to serve the whole of the population, and government is going to provide options to ensure equity. Certainly, the U.S. federal government will. I'm sure the Canadian government's no different. So there's going to be a balance. But when we look at where the majority of the action is, ideally, it's shifting in a way that's more about self-service, more about modern user experiences. And we can get there if that's where we're focused. We can't forget, that there is sometimes a digital divide. Sometimes there's a lack of internet connectivity in rural America and the United States that may make someone more likely to do an in-person transaction. But that will change over time as well, and we need to be, to use maybe a hockey analogy, you got to skate to where the puck's going, right? I don't know hockey very well, in the US. So and it's going to more digital, so we need to continue to be focused on that.
Yeah, and I think that's what we see, especially folks who typically tune into these kinds of conversations, are those change agents. They're those challengers that are trying to say, how do I make that change? How do I build that case for change? And so I guess with that in mind, what are some of the ways that you guys have been working that you've helped people break down that change journey and those tactical steps and ways to consider and think about how do we change our service model to support the change that customers are either asking for or that we need to do for efficiency purposes?
Well, I think, we begin by recognizing where we are today, and we know that citizens, they have a lot of questions about services, and they are routinely, contacting a customer service agent, whether it's a person in the government or related to the government, to get answers. And when that citizen engagement is sort of bi-directional, I'm going to pick up the phone and call, or maybe I'll send an email, and that agent is responsible for managing the entirety of that case. That agent can feel somewhat isolated because they don't have access to all of the information. We've talked about, we have these silos in our agencies. So, we need to start here, because this is where a lot of citizen engagement is today. But, the reality is that we have the opportunity to do something different. We can think more about this idea of service delivery, where that agent is connected back into the organizations that have the information that will really solve that problem quickly. And that connection between the department and agencies in this diagram, that agent, is the key to beginning a move towards effective service delivery, quick, efficient service delivery, to a modern approach. And when those work teams can be connected back into operations and IT, and then really the systems of record, because that's where the core information lies. And when those connections are there, we have the opportunity to provide service to that citizen in ways that they're not used to being served, because we can do it maybe in one call. We can do it in a way that any agent that they talk to is able to answer the information, because they can have everything presented to them in one place. There was a statistic before that, many people are frustrated that they don't, that it takes a lot of calls to get to the right person, or they don't know how to navigate. Well, sometimes that's because they call somebody who doesn't have access to the information they need, so they have to keep calling until they find that right person. Well, let's change that. Let's create these connections so the information is available routinely to people in that call center. And then, we can go even further, I think, and, be connecting that person directly to the people that can answer the question. And ideally, even answering questions before people have them. This idea of an anticipatory government, being proactive. Again, we've talked about that word already. Being proactive in getting people information because we know they're going to need it. If we're thinking about a family, and we know that this family has some children that are, becoming close to college age, can't we provide them some information about programs that support higher education, a loan program, or vocational training, or some other kind of service that the government might offer? We can push it out to these people because we know some information about them. And that idea, I think, becomes really powerful when you think about all the kinds of services that we offer in government. The fact that people, when they opt in to participating in government programs. We know information about them, some demographic information about their family status, children, and other things. So we could be much more effective in helping people navigate government and programs that are available to them by using the data we have and sharing opportunities with them early on. So I really like this concept of anticipatory government, but it doesn't have to stop there, because we have the bigger opportunity or add-on opportunity, I'll say, of connecting people directly to the agencies and offices that have information, who can make that information available in a self-service way using portals or virtual agents, different capabilities that let people interact more directly with their information, solve their own problem on their terms, on their time, much like we do with in our private sector businesses, in our private lives. Again, people think that commercial companies provide better customer service than the government, and perhaps part of that's because you can interact with that commercial company on your terms when you want to. So we have those opportunities right in front of us, I think. And then you layer in a field service component, because sometimes somebody needs to come out to my home or it needs to interact with me more directly because of the kind of problem that I have. And the worst situation in your private life or your interacting with a government agency is when you have to schedule multiple visits for that field service worker to come and try and solve the problem. You have to take off work. You might need childcare. It's very difficult. So let's make sure that those field service workers are really well connected back into those same work teams, those same systems of record, have all the right information so they can serve the citizen very effectively and very quickly, and ideally in a single trip. And once we're thinking about that, continuum of where I'm starting with, I'm going to call somebody and they're going to have to go research an answer for me, to getting that person who's going to research the answer information instantaneously to solve my problem, to being proactive and, eventually anticipating my needs and getting the information, to making sure if somebody has to visit me, they have everything at their fingertips, and giving me options to interact directly with my data and solve my own problems. You can really see how we can evolve the way we think about our interactions in government, and how we serve the people who are really most important to us, are the people who take advantage of the programs we offer.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. And if we can just go back to that one, I just think it's a powerful slide. I want to go back to it because I think it's an interesting the field service one, or even the two slides before that. Perfect. Is I think this concept, and if we're in that sort of left hand, that citizen view, and I think it's one of the things we see with our network and our clients, and asking, how do we anticipate what their needs are? And it's a little bit of the Pareto element of saying what's 80% of the calls that are coming, or the reason. And again, it's for us, it's the jobs to be done. What do they need to do? They're calling in because I need to do this. And if we can start to anticipate, well, I need to do this, well, then let's do that. And I think a lot of people, you start to see the simple example of that is changing IVRs. If you need to do X, press this. If it's an emergency, like you're guiding people based on your expectations, and it's taking that the layer beyond just telephony in that channel and thinking about it from a needs perspective, and then being able to track that. And the other thing is being able to. It's always tough to move a file from one person to the next, and to be able to not lose anything or momentum, or that crossover of explaining this is what this person was calling in for, and how do we have that. To be able to work through it. And I think it doesn't need to be it's framework that I think is just important for people to take away and think about, is to say, how do we think about our work as we're serving customers? What are their needs? Who's helping them? And how do we do handoffs as we think about that? To break that down from that perspective, I think is a really interesting way to look at it.
Well, a lot of that requires you to be really aware of your processes and your data, and how the work and the data flow across your organization. So it's David, what you're suggesting, I think, is most definitely a best practice for for people to do is they're beginning a digital transformation, or they're thinking comprehensively about how they want to run their organization, what the future of work and customer service looks like for them. I think you have to do what you're describing as a really important first step.
Yeah. And I think it's that sort of starting with the concept and then moving on to that. And I guess with that in mind, how do you go from these concepts to what are the tactical next steps? What are the things that you would think about that government divisions would look for?
Well, I think a lot of it is about demonstrating value, and beginning with this idea of a digital a digital roadmap, some sort of capability map or plan that shows how you get to better customer service, better mission attainment. You have to envision that future, envision the value that you can provide. I'm talking about value because I think if you're a CIO, you're a leader in an organization, and you've invested in these technology systems, and you're not able to show the value it provides back into a program, it's very hard to get more funding in the future. It's very hard to build the next system if I can't show the program managers that the work that I've done is helping them do a better job with their program. So it all begins with this very first step of agree on a digital roadmap. What are we trying to accomplish? And then we have to be able to create value. You have to be able to demonstrate the improved processes and new technologies. It's that this idea of creating value. This is doing a project and being successful in that project. And ideally, as you go along that process, go along that way, you've understood what your baseline is for the service that your capability you're improving, because we then want to be able to validate value. We want to be able to show that what we've done is better, and I can only do that if I know where I started. I need that baseline, and then I can measure my improvements. And when I can do that, I set myself up to be a champion for success and change management in the organization. And I can tell a story that's really compelling about the transformation. And I find that when we think about this value wheel, and I should note, this is how we run our projects at ServiceNow. We have a very intense focus on demonstrating the value of the technologies we offer and how they transform an organization. So if I'm doing this right, and I have an agreed upon plan, a mutual success plan, and then we work together to implement a project and can show it's successful, and then we tell that story together as partners, and we can be co-champions for success. Finds a very virtuous cycle. We end up with new ideas and new opportunities for more digital transformation activities, and we're transforming more and more processes, and this cycle continues, and it creates the opportunity and momentum around real change.
I just want to jump in. I think again, this is the kind of slide where I know leaders are often trying to get their team to do things. And it's about saying, it's like, I want to make change, or I want to do something. It's like, these are the kinds of things, is how do you delegate this down to people, saying, show this framework and how does it work? Or how do you build the case internally to make that change, is to use these frameworks. I think it's great. So yeah, sorry, I just want to jump in and say that.
Well, I just wanted to bring us back to this, this slide before, and be thoughtful about these, these concepts of, citizen engagement, service delivery, and field service. And, just the idea of citizen engagement is we do want to provide a consumer-like experience at every touch point. Again, go back to the survey from earlier. People think that the private sector does this better than government. So let's understand what those commercial models look like, and do our best to replicate those in government. And then when we deliver a service, it needs to be resilient, and we want to be able to solve issues faster. And by resilient, we need to be able to operate under any conditions, whether it's a pandemic, another kind of natural disaster, a busy season where lots of people are calling in, say it's tax season, or it's a time to do some kind of government filing and people are hitting the phones. We need to be able to scale in those situations. So people are able to get their business of government done. And then, this field service, which comes up often, whether it's fixing a pothole or visiting someone's home to do an assessment or dealing with something related to the environment. This idea of proactively managing this location-based work efficiently and safely, so people have the information that they need. So you only have to schedule one home visit as opposed to multiple home visits. We're really focused on this idea of being efficient and effective for the people that we serve, whether it's in a call center or out in the field, perhaps at someone's home or place of work.
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. So I know we've got a poll coming out. And again, just trying to sort of link what people are thinking about who are in the group here, saying, when considering this service change, what matters most? We think about when you're thinking about these changes, is it citizen engagement and satisfaction? Is it around how do you deliver things internally more efficiently? How are, when you're externally in the field, delivering things more efficiently? Or is it really around cost? And then we probably could have put in a fifth as an other, because we're probably not capturing everything in this, but would be curious to open up the poll as on this one. Thanks, Jenna. So we'll let people respond back and read that thing, and we'll try to gather the results in the world of Zoom world. But I guess as we're doing that, Jonathan, one of the before we sort of show the results on that one was, we just had a recent one of our we have an advisory council. We have several advisory councils, but one of them was really around the citizen or the customer service teams, and it was this question of back to work. And I know you're in the Washington D.C. area. In Toronto, we're just starting to open up here in Ontario, but I know some of our groups in Saskatchewan they're fully back to normal, masks off, everything open, ready to go. How have you seen the back to work and the reopening emerge in various clients? I'm just curious from a pulse check.
So I think it's evolving, and I'll start with our ServiceNow office. We've opened at 25% capacity. I think we'll be moving to 50% capacity soon. So I've been in the office a couple of times. I know some of my colleagues have as well. But we're still very much working from home, and we're getting vaccinated. Many of us are. I think our vaccination rates are continuing to move up. So we're not out of the woods yet, but we're feeling optimistic in terms of the future. But the return into an office is not as simple, I think, as exiting or going home from the office. We are. It was easy to send people home. There's a lot of devil in the details about bringing people back. I think generally, government agencies, private companies in the U.S. are not asking people for their vaccination status. So when we don't know who is vaccinated and we just have a percentage of people, we have we have a situation where we still have to maintain some best practices for health and safety in our offices, whether it's physical distancing or mask wearing or other things. And we find that there are needs for some digital technologies to make that easier. If you're just thinking about setting up a reservation system for workers who come to the office only periodically now, that's a new system or new technology for a lot of people, and we want to present these different capabilities out to our employees in a way that makes it easy for them to interact with, whether it's on a mobile device or others. So we have to be thinking about these tools we need in the new normal. But I've also in lots of conversations with different U.S. federal government agencies, I hear that we're moving past this idea of getting people back into the office and thinking more about what does the future of work look like. Because I think that's a very clear recognition that we've come to the conclusion that the return to work, getting back to where we were the day before everybody went home, that's not what we're going to return to. We are going to be doing something different in the future, whether that different is a hybrid environment, full-time teleworkers, some people go into the office full-time. We don't know exactly, but that future of work's being evaluated right now by many different agencies. And I expect that there'll be some elements of remote teams or remote employees. We used to hire people who lived in the Washington, D.C. area for my office. In this environment, I could hire people anywhere, and that creates more flexibility as long as I had the support to operate my office that way. You need the leadership support, and then you need the technology support. And we've been demonstrating how these technologies work. When we're all remote, when we're some in the office and some remote, we might need some additional technologies or approaches. And so we are all talking about this inside and outside the government about what it's going to look like. So I think we don't know what the future is, but we know it's different than what it was pre-COVID.
Yeah, and I think that's something that for if you can hear the scratching, my 9-month-old puppy has awoken on not on cue. So the joys of working at home, but the hybrid model, I think, is something that will definitely be here to stay, and we'll be doing some more work on this in the coming into the fall. So stay tuned for that for those who are joining. So maybe Jenna, I'm not sure if we're able to share the results. So this is great. I think it's really interesting. Can everyone see those results? Hopefully, Jenna, I think everyone can. I'll assume that they can. Jonathan, can you see those results?
I'm seeing it. Citizen engagement and satisfaction seems to be the has the majority of the votes here.
And I think it's a great sort of, that's the high watermark to shoot for and for it to look through, to work through. I like to see that. Awesome. So I'm just doing a quick time check. I know we've got about 13 or so minutes before the hour. So maybe, Jonathan, what we could do is if you've got a case study, or maybe we could just do one of the case studies to go through, and I know that there's maybe leave some opportunity towards the end, and I'll prompt people if they have any questions that they can start to ask any questions. I see one is, can you please show your new puppy? I will at the end for those who stick around. That'll be the prize. But over to you, Jonathan.
Sure. I do have a case study that I want to share from our Washington State's Department of Health. This was one of the places where COVID was in the United States, where we first saw it. And Washington State, they were among the first state and local government agencies that were reacting to this. And, they're a pretty big ServiceNow customer. They used ServiceNow to automate the delivery of many services inside their IT organization. And, they have a customer mindset. If you're the CIO of the agency, like the state health department, your customers are everybody that works in that agency who's doing the, really critical mission of public health. So from the CIO's perspective, this is very much the same kind of concept in our poll of providing consumer-like experiences to your customers. They just happen to be internal customers. But, they deployed ServiceNow, and, they saw some really tremendous results. Their service cost, the cost to provide service went down by 50%. They were very successful in getting 2/3 of their organization to adopt self-service approaches. Again, this idea of let's have people, interact the way they want to interact, and give them an option to do it on their terms. And that sort of drove this 360-degree view of their customers, so they know who they're serving and what they need, and they're able to provide a more proactive approach to serving that customer, whether it's a laptop that might need replacement, or a new phone or some other technology. And this organization, since they invested heavily in ServiceNow and really understood ServiceNow as a platform for digital transformation, a tool that really can connect the systems and the data of an organization, they use ServiceNow as really a core component of their COVID response. When COVID hit and they began a process to go into emergency response mode, it's that process is a very manual, paper-based process, and they digitized it using ServiceNow. And as a company, we worked with them to do this, and we embraced this idea of using ServiceNow as a digital platform for emergency response. So we made this incident management system, emergency response application, available to customers and non-customers alike during this time. So everyone could use ServiceNow as a digital platform for managing the really critical work during those early days of COVID. So it's a case study we always like to talk about. It has a lot of the same elements that we've referenced here today, although be it internal to the team, but it was about providing very efficient and connected services to make it easy for this agency to do their mission. And when you think about the work we do in government, and it is very complicated. There's lots of pieces. It touches a lot of different things, and you see somebody interacting here, cutting across lots of different tools and technologies. It might look complicated, but in my experience, it doesn't have to be, as long as we're doing some straightforward things, some best practices to make it easier. And that, I think, begins always with this idea of understanding your work and your data. And David, we talked about this earlier as a place to get started when we have this customer call center situation. Well, if you don't understand how people interact with your agency, if you don't understand what the work of your agency is, or how the data flows and supports that work, it's very hard to change in a way that's really significant. So you have to embrace a governance for your data. You think about the systems that you have that support this, and then pause and rethink and redesign the processes that support your agency. A lot of the processes we have in the agencies I've worked in, they were there long before the idea of digital transformation. They are processes that kind of grew out because that's the way the systems worked. It might not be the best way to work today. So we need the courage to rethink and redesign the way our systems and our data work. So, what are the workflows that really matter in your organization? What are the moments that matter when you serve a customer? Can we break down silos and create efficiencies? And the answer is we can, but we need to be smart about it, and we need to do you can't rush through these steps. We want to go fast, but we don't want to go so fast that we create blind spots. So we need to sometimes maybe do what I call a strategic pause to think about these things, to do them right. And then lastly, I referenced this before about this idea of value. If we're implementing technologies and we're saying we're doing digital transformation, but we're not able to be successful in our in showing value, we're not going to have a opportunity to do more digital transformation and more work. We need to make sure that we're telling that transformation story to whoever's going to listen, to the various stakeholders and inside and outside our government, and other agencies and the people we serve, so on and so forth. So if you can measure outcomes and show value, ultimately, I predict that you'll be very successful in this digital transformation journey. So those are tried and true lessons learned from my experience.
I think again, another great sort of slide or set of concepts to be able to break it down for folks to where to start, how to think through these. And again, it's really understanding those work. What's those core things that you're trying to get through? How are those processes? Why are you doing it that way? Why is it 8 steps? Why can't it be 4? And I think most importantly, how are you measuring value? We talked just in the previous sort of poll of what matters to folks around is it customer satisfaction? Well, let's measure that then and show that as the outcome. If it's cost efficiency, let's measure that and share that as the outcome. So I think thinking through those elements is just a really great way of thinking through it. I'll put it out to the group. I know I think the question are open. I'm looking at sort of the chat and the Q&A and see if there's any questions for Jonathan or the group that we can ask. I know we got through a lot in this session, so as we start to, if there's no other questions, and I'm not sure, Jonathan, I think I lost your video feed. Oh, there's one QA coming in.
Nope, I'm back. Sorry.
Perfect. Have you had clients who were hesitant to evolve? Was a question, and how did you deal with that hesitation?
Well, I think that's a really good question because, traditionally people hate change, whatever it is. And I think you can't, you can't convince someone to change by just telling them that you need to change. You need to be able to demonstrate the positive impact of change, whether it's introducing a new technology or a new process. What's in it for them and the people they serve. If you can't build that kind of support, it's very difficult for people to go along with it. I've done a number of these change projects over time, and there's always some people who are really active and jumping at the opportunity to change. But there are many people who are hesitant and they're never going to go. But then right in the middle, and I think most people, say if it's 25% will, adopt it immediately and 25% never will, there's another, 50% or so that are persuadable. And it's that group that we need to really focus on and support through that change. And if we get most of them, you're at well more than 50%. It's way past a tipping point and the organization moves forward. But we have to speak to them and help them see the value and be honest with them and sort of acknowledge at times maybe we don't know exactly where this is going to go or exactly how it's going to work, but we'll learn together and be supportive of each other and have empathy for those who might have some natural resistance.
For sure. And I think it's one of the areas we see across clients is that this concept of change management is almost been sort of abused in some ways. And it's sort of this catch-all of this and that, and it's been not done properly. But ultimately it's there. You're right. People are resistant to change, but it's about finding the different ways of communicating, building the case, and in some cases communicating that we're changing despite your discomfort and perspectives and from there. But I think that the previous slide of know the work, know the processes, map the value are great ways. So I know we're just getting to the hour. I just maybe wanted to, Jonathan, if there's any last remarks as we, from your perspective before we wrap up, and I want to plug our event in just a few.
Well, I'll say thanks for having me today. I look forward to joining you September 15th and 16th, at the Citizen Service Summit, if you'll have me. And
we would love to have you. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Right, and well, maybe by that point, maybe I'll be in my office in ServiceNow office, and I can do it from my desk back there. But it's been a fun conversation today. I think these are hard problems, whether you're in government in the United States or in Canada, or you're in a private sector company. Managing technology is not easy. Digitally transforming is not easy. Doing this work on behalf of citizens is has always been very meaningful to me, and I think it reemphasizes the importance of doing it right and taking the time to follow the steps like we talked about in that last slide, to thinking about value and doing a transformation that is sustainable is really important. And we're dealing with taxpayer dollars, so we want to make sure that they're well spent on technologies and systems that will make the government better and people more successful and have more opportunity. So I really like to preach about these things. I really do believe them. So thanks for getting a chance to do that today.
We're picking up what you're putting down and appreciate it. And I know for those who are on the call, we'll get links and invites to the event coming up in the fall. Lots of events. And also we want to put out and ask for those who are saying, if there are good case studies, stories that you're working on, please reach out to us. You'll have our contact information, as we want to sort of find stories and problems and challenges to highlight. So we'll be reaching out with some surveys from that perspective. So with that, and to Liam's ask, I will share my 9-month-old puppy, just for the sake, who's been bugging here. He's a big guy, but he's a friendly guy. He's a Samoyed puppy. So with that, I will say thank you very much, everyone, especially Jonathan, for being here. And we'll look forward to being in touch. Everyone have a great day. Stay healthy. And we'll see you guys all soon.
All right. See you soon. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.